So welcome back again for week number 9 in AP Research. This one here, or this particular video, is going to deal with IRB documentation, just because we're in kind of this weird transition mode where we're trying to get out of background introduction information and let's get on to the actual research part of the course. IRBs, if you didn't pick up on it by now, they are a really, really big deal. When you go through IRB, there turn out to be 3 different pathways that you go through when you take it. The first one is an exempt study, meaning you don't need to really deal with the IRB. You still fill it out, but they look at it and go, oh yeah, this doesn't deal with us, moving on with life. So that's if you aren't dealing with humans, or you are dealing with humans under very specific circumstances, and those are what we call the exempt circumstances, and it's defined by the federal government. As you can see on the screen, it says federal regulations. Second version is what we call the expedited version, which is you're not really going to do too much, so we're not really going to scrutinize too much. So you're asking an innocuous survey about something that's not going to be traumatized or anything like that. A full IRB is going to require that they look at everything you do, and they're going to need lots of consent forms, and they're double checking everything because you are posing or presenting more than a minimal risk. You actually might be doing something to them, or you're going to be talking about something that might be traumatic. Some of your questions actually properly would require a full IRB review, and to be honest, I would like you to avoid those as much as humanly possible, just because it's a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of work on your part, and I would just like to avoid those if possible. And fortunately, like I said, some of your topics, they're great questions. They're targeting a full IRB review, and I'd rather avoid that. So, like I said, there are exemptions to this, and this actually comes from the course and exam description. You could read it yourself. We're not going to get your work published in some type of big national paper, which means odds are we technically don't need to do IRB, but we're going to make our own little journal at the very end, so we're kind of getting it published. So I'm going to have you all go through the process anyway, but technically we're not publishing, so we really all fall into the exempt category, but we're going to treat you as though that's not the case. But why do we do any of this stuff? I know I've gone over this before, but it's worth repeating. Humans are bad to other humans. We would sit there, we had this thing called eugenics. So eugenics is, they're good genes, they're bad genes, so let's eliminate those with bad genes. This is in this country. We had World War II, where Japanese are experimenting on people, Nazis are experimenting on people. We decided, no, that's bad. We had the Nuremberg Code. After that, we realized that's not enough, so we had the Declaration of Helsinki, because there's some stuff going on in between that this timeline doesn't even address. We triggered the Tuskegee experiment, which is going on throughout all of this, which is where we intentionally gave people syphilis, and we didn't treat them so that we could learn what syphilis does to humans. We realized at the end, we need to tighten up the reins, and that's when the Belmont report came in. But you could see those 3 timelines of when we instituted protections, and we still blow it. So we do IRB to protect us from ourselves, because we do bad things. So one of the things that you're probably going to need to think about is something called a risk assessment, which from a workshop they've created one, but it's what are the things that you need to think about? So what are the risks that you're going to have? Am I going to do something to you? Could you physically get hurt? Could you actually chemically get hurt? Do you actually run the risk of getting sick or dying? Do you run the risk of, getting hurt with equipment? Do you run the risk of being traumatized or bringing up past traumas? Those are things that you need to think about in what we would call a risk assessment. So it's thinking through what could go wrong, because odds are something might go wrong, and we would like to avoid that as much as possible. So the IRB document that you're going to be filling out has 3 parts, and I gave you the copy of it, just without the full-blown questions for you to fill in. But it's divided into 3 parts. The first part asks you a few questions about, so what's the study, what's your question, where are you going to do this, why are you going to do this, is there anything good that's going to come out of this? Second part is getting a little more specific, meaning who are you going to study, why are you picking them, how are you picking them, will there be benefits from this thing, what do you anticipate the benefits to be, what are the risks going to be, how are you going to mitigate those risks, how are you going to protect participant information so they can't be identified, all sorts of things along those lines. And the third part would deal with if you need to do other things. So if some of you are going to be gathering information from a hospital, let's say, you might have to run through their IRB. So I want to know, what other IRBs are you doing? Part 4 is, hey, is there anything else you need to throw in? But that's basically what the IRB is. It's thinking through, what are you doing, to whom are you doing these things, and what can go wrong. Because if you don't think of what can go wrong and how you're getting approvals, we tend to run the risk of causing harm to others, and let's avoid that.